Hello, welcome to demola, and we're back with another status video. So you would have seen the thumbnail. We're going to be talking about concept mapping. I feel like it's kind of slept on, to be honest. Like, I didn't know about it before A level, but my biology teacher was so adamant. Like, you guys got to do concept maps. He'd say for us to do almost every single time we finish a topic, we'd have that for homework. So I found it really, really useful. Although maybe to get used to it is a bit of a problem, but when you get used to it, it is so useful in terms of just like organizing your ideas, making sure that you actually remember things. So I'm gonna try and explain it, what it is, how is it different to mind maps, and why it's a great revision method that I think you guys should consider. So just a recommendation really, but kind of just putting it out there for the concept map crew, trying to see if it's something that you guys could use. So let's get straight into it. So if I'm really gonna sell this to you, I need to talk about what a concept is, first of all. And we're gonna get into an example where I'm gonna try and work through making a bit of a concept map with you. But literally, you start with your principal idea. So say for example, I'm revising biology and I'm doing neurons, for example. We start with neurons and then we literally link things. So you're gonna draw an arrow to one point about neurons, go to another point about neurons, again, moving my arms a lot. But do you see how you take one idea, you link it to another idea, goes to another idea, another idea. And it kind of breaks down. I don't want to like spice things too much, but it's about forcing your brain to make those connections because it's going to help with your memory. So for example, say if I'm covering neurons in biology, yeah, like I said, one point I'm going to end up talking about action potentials, which involves the neuron membrane, right? And then that's going to link me back to, oh wait, hold on a minute. Back then we did cell membranes. Let me talk a bit about phospholipids, everything like that. I don't want to get into too much detail because this isn't a biology video, but do you see how you're thinking back to even topics that you did earlier in the spec? You're linking all of those ideas together and it's forcing you to have a better long-term memory. So I think that's kind of the art of concept mapping. It's like, if you do a mind map, you can start maybe up here and then go down here, and that's fine because you're doing a mind map. So you just have to have one theme here, one theme there. But with a concept map, literally, I feel like I'm Pep Guardiola with all the hand symbols I'm doing, but it's like when you have that one idea and you keep on linking it to something else, because everything has to have a link, right? So if you keep linking it, that's forcing your brain to make those connections. It's forcing you to remember things that you've covered before. And that is really kind of the beauty of why we do a concept map. Because I think just in general, it does force you to think a lot more. And especially if you're doing it like active recall from memory, guys, it's honestly like cheat code because you will remember, because sometimes you even surprise yourself by how much you remember. But if you're able to make a concept map from recall and you've done topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, topic 4, all from your connections, yeah, that's how you can say, they can ask me anything in an exam. Yeah, because a lot of these exam boards, they'll have one topic, but then hidden in that question there's another topic. So if you do this method, you are preparing yourself for a question like that. So that's kind of my spiel about what a concept map is, trying to kind of explain that. Again, we will get into an example later in the video, but I hope that kind of makes sense as to why I'm pushing it so hard. I thought it was only right, based on what we talked about in the video, we'll do a tiny start to a concept map on neurons. And the point I want to get across, we're not going to go through a whole thing. The point I want to get across is, how do we go about making a concept map? Well, first of all, I've got my central topic. My big topic is neurons. Yeah. So that's the first thing, the big idea. Then you want to break it down into categories. So if we put our categories in purple, maybe one category is going to be about, I don't know, structure of a neuron. Yeah. Another category can be about maybe types of neuron. Another one can be about action potentials. Another one can maybe be about synapses or something like that. Cool. So you see here, we've got different ideas about neurons. Let's go back to black. Now, literally, start with something like this. Draw the structure of a neuron. I'm going to draw a really, really bad neuron, okay? Just because of time. That's a really awful neuron and it looks more like a bone. But I'll just add on this. And then literally make small things. You don't want to do too much with a concept map. Label it. Myelin sheath. Yeah? Cool. When I labeled myelin sheath, I'm thinking, myelin sheath, what's that useful for? Well, link it to this. If I have a myelin sheath, and again, whenever it's not related to the direct topic, maybe do a different color. Myelin sheath, I'm going to relate it to sortatory versus continuous conduction. Yeah? You can make that link. And then maybe sortatory conduction I'll mention is faster. Cool, we've made a link there. Let's continue labeling our neuron. We have a dendrite. We have an axon, for example. These are just little things that you can add on that are going to help you to make a better concept map. Cool. Again, another thing, let's think about the types, yeah? We know there's 3 different types. Let's split off an arrow into 3. We've got 3 main types of neuron. We've got motor, we've got sensory, and we've got reflex. And literally, again, when we're talking about types, I've grouped them all together. I can then maybe talk about a reflex arc. So we'll talk about the reflex arcs where we'll go like stimulus, and then we'll go to your receptor, stuff like that, and then yada, yada, yada. We won't go through the whole thing. But you can see that we've made an idea, we're adding something on. Also, motor neurons, maybe you could mention about, they normally go to muscles, right? Effectors. So a muscle or a gland. So the effector, muscle or gland, what can I link that to? Well, a gland. Let's do yellow for different concepts, because now we'll go to a different topic in the biology spec, if you know it. Gland, hormones. Let's talk about hormones, yeah? Peptide versus steroid. And even if we want to make another link, we don't want to go too far, but we want to make a bit of a link. Let's quickly do the structure of an amino acid, because that's linked to peptides. So do you see here, we've made a small link to a different topic that's kind of reminding us. If I didn't know what the structure of a peptide is, let me go and revise it. But that's the structure of amino acid there, we've added that on. Even muscles, I can then talk about muscle contraction for a tiny bit. Yeah, not the whole process, or not the whole process in a lot of detail, but you are just adding on tiny things. Action potential as well. Guys, something like this, you don't want to go into a huge depth about the process, so let's just draw the graph. Literally draw the graph, and then make sure that you know your important landmarks. So negative 70 millivolts, minus 55 millivolts, for example, positive 40. Know what happens at each stage. Honestly, draw an arrow. This is where a voltage gated potassium channel open. Yeah, you can mention hyperpolarized. So stuff like this are just really good to know. You know the idea. You're not going into excessive detail because you're just testing yourself to do this quite quickly. Again, with the synapses, I could maybe mention about voltage gated calcium channels, and then that can link on to muscles as well. So do you see how you take an idea and you just go with it? You make more connections. So that part I've shown, 1 was the title, 2 was the chunking into categories, 3 was the ideas, 4, keep it visual. Stuff like diagrams is really good to, 1, fill out your concept map, but 2, also so that you kind of, it keeps it interesting. Do you get what I mean? It keeps it interesting with the colors, with the diagrams, stuff like that. I think that's the best way to do a concept map. And again, don't go in too much detail with this. Honestly, you only want 1-2 words for each one. At most, a sentence. Yeah, you don't want to be writing paragraphs in your concept map. That's just going to overpollute things, and it then becomes more like blurting and less like making a concept map. You're just doing small things that will get you to think about this topic. And say if that's something I didn't know. So, like, for example, we've mentioned muscles. Say if I didn't know, for example, about troponin, then I put that in red. That's something I didn't know. I can then look at my textbook and write this in. So I can talk about troponin, I can talk about myosin, I can talk about actin, stuff like that. And again, maybe you draw the diagram, but literally stuff like this, you just add on, and that will help you out loads. So I've just drawn a little diagram here. Honestly, I probably should have left that, but that's my little diagram on muscle contraction. But you can see here, if it's something I didn't know, I'm going to draw it in red, so I know that I didn't know that. And then maybe when I'm going back to revision, I'll do another concept map. If I do another concept map in revision, I can see what was in red last time. Is it still in red? So I hope that makes sense in terms of how do you make a concept map. Of course, I haven't done this in a lot of detail at the moment, just for time. But I hope you can realize you're starting to make connections and you're forcing yourself to think a bit more, not only just the topic that you're covering, but your course more holistically. And kind of the last thing I did want to mention is just about, after you've made your concept map, how are we going to revise from it, right? I've just done an example with notes. Guys, say these are your notes that you've made, yeah? And obviously you haven't gone into detail. But guys, this is so boring to revise from. Like literally, what will end up happening if you revise on this is you're going to read the notes and you're just going to try and regurgitate them. I'm sure maybe you might end up remembering them. But guys, this is not an effective method to learn. If I say, oh, neuron structure, I read what the thing is axon, maybe I highlight it for effect. Maybe I highlight it or something. Guys, that's not going to stick into my memory as much as if I see this, I'm saying, okay, I looked at this structure, axon. Oh, what's an axon? Let me define it. And you can even add in your definition, like another arrow here, for example. But literally, guys, Memorizing like this is going to be so much better. Same here. If, for example, really easy with processes, action potential, you see here, you would have a list of everything that's going on in the action potential, yeah? But if I had this and I've just got the diagram there, now I need to think, yeah? I need to think a lot deeper about minus 70 millivolts, what's happening? That's the resting potential. Goes up to minus 55 millivolts, your voltage gauge to sodium ion channel opens, you get massive depolarization. Do you see how you're forcing yourself to think if you do it this way? If you're looking at your concept map, you force yourself to think. Whereas, if you're just looking at a bunch of notes, for example here, guys, you're just going to end up reading that thing and it's not actually going to stick because you're not actively recalling. So, that's why a concept map is so great. You've actively recalled to make it in the first place, and then also you're actively recalling when you're revising from it. So it's forcing your brain to think a lot more. Even so, guys, you see when I was reading my notes about this neuron topic, I never got anything about proteins. I never got to anything about muscle contraction because you just wouldn't get that if you're just reading a set of notes. So you see here, not only is it making you remember the stuff that you wanted to revise better, but also you're linking into other topics, meaning that eventually you're just understanding the course a lot better. So again, that's just another reason why I'm so adamant on concept mapping is such a brilliant tool to use. So depending on the amount of waffle that I've done, that should be a wrap on the video. So I hope it wasn't too long, but I really hope that you've seen concept mapping as maybe this is something I could try. Maybe this looks really, really good and I'm gonna do it. I genuinely think concept mapping, especially when you wanna cover a big topic, so maybe like a whole topic in your spec, if you wanna cover that, but then you don't want to go through ages and ages of writing notes, I think concept mapping is a really good way to just break it down, make sure you remember what you know, and even in the meantime, you're covering different topics as well. So genuinely, I'd give it a try. I normally use it for biology or like medicine, because for example, say you have a symptom and then you need to link that to a bunch of different conditions, I find that's a really good way to revise as well. So genuinely, I'd say just give it a go. If you found the video useful, please like and share and subscribe to the channel. Any questions at all about any revision methods, I'll do my best to do research on some of the ones that I might not be more familiar with. But if you want to hear more about concept mapping, or for example, blighting is another one that I think I'm really good at, self-proclaimed. But drop a question in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. We've also got the TikTok and the Instagram, both at demola. But that is a wrap on this video. So I'll catch you in the next one. Hope that's helped. Bye for now.